This is the Gerry Callahan Show.
All right, it's been 17 days since Kamala Harris executed a coup against the sitting president, had Joe Biden removed from the race. Should have him removed from office, but maybe they'll do that another day. But she got him to step down, step aside with the help of Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer. They told the feeble, frail, dementia-riddled president his time is up. It is her time now. She got no votes. She won no primaries. She won no delegates. She decided that day that she was the candidate for president, a woman who couldn't even crack 1% when she ran on her own 4 years ago. Now she's a nominee. She's done no interviews. She's answered no questions. She's held no press conferences. She just thinks she is the anointed one and she has some right to the presidency. Well, she had one big decision. This was it. She had to choose a running mate who would help her in this race, and God knows she needs help. She is a really, really vapid, vacuous, stupid person who doesn't grasp any of the issues, is completely unfit for the job, as any honest person knows. If you watch her, if you listen to her, if you saw her yesterday, you know she has no clue about anything. Foreign affairs, the economy, domestic policy, she can't do it. She's incapable. She's no more capable of doing the job than the feeble dementia patient that she shoved out of the way. But she could name a running mate who could shore things up. A running mate with a record, a running mate with a brain, a running mate who could fool people into thinking this ticket is not the most radical in American history. Well, she had one job, one big decision to make, and I think we can say definitively today, she blew it. This is a disaster, and I honestly do not get it. I watched her rally. I've read everything I can read. It makes no sense. Kamala Harris picked a fellow traveler, a fellow socialist, a man who is every bit as extreme as she is, a man who does not have a single opinion, a single position, a single viewpoint that is in the American mainstream. He is so far out there. He's so extreme. I don't even know where to begin. There is nothing in his record as governor, as congressman, that would lend you to believe that he could possibly be a moderate. The media will attempt to tell you he's a moderate, he's a centrist. Let me ask you this. Is there any proof of that? Any evidence of that? Is there anything you could point to and say, look, he's a centrist? Like everything else with the Democrats, it's all emotion. It's all an illusion. He's an old, white, bald, fat guy from Minnesota. He must be a centrist. Nancy Pelosi actually said yesterday that it is unreal, her word, to paint him as an extremist, to paint him as far left. She said he's right down the middle. And of course, the interviewer didn't ask for an example. I want one example of what makes Tim Walz a moderate, a centrist, makes him in line with mainstream America. He's from Nebraska. He's now governor of Minnesota. That doesn't make him a centrist. Minnesota's a deep blue state. He is a deep blue guy who has never held a position that is not far left. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with this guy. Abortion? That was the one big issue the Democrats had. Abortion. They polled plus 10 on abortion against Trump. Well, no more. You cannot paint Trump and J.D. Vance as extremists on abortion when your guy believes in infanticide. Yes, allowing babies to die after they're born. He has done that. He has signed into law legislation that allows babies born alive to die in the delivery room. That is as extreme as it gets. Everything about him is extreme. Everything. He believes deeply in castrating and mutilating children, confused children who think they might have been born in the wrong body. He made Minnesota a sanctuary state where kids from other states can go there and get sex change surgeries. Children. How is that not miles outside of mainstream America? That is a issue that polls 75% against the mutilation and castration of children. This guy believes in it. This is a bizarre choice, just a crazy choice. We saw they think this was a big victory yesterday when they held a rally and everyone was cheering and laughing at things she was laughing hysterically at anything, as she always does, and so was he, by the way. They thought this was a great event. Well, let me tell you, it backfired. You know why? Because the guy she should have chosen, Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, he opened for them, and he gave a really good speech. He played the crowd. They loved him, and he endorsed her, of course, because he sold out to try to get the position, vice president. He moderated his views on Israel, but he's still a guy who served in the IDF. He's still Jewish. He still hasn't called for a ceasefire. So he was unacceptable to today's Democrat Party. They couldn't have him, even though he would have delivered 19 electoral votes. The state of Pennsylvania would have swung to her if she chose him, but she didn't. And she chose Tim Walz from Minnesota, which was going to vote blue anyway. And I don't know why. I honestly don't know why. I mean, maybe she thinks Josh Shapiro would have outshined her because he's smart and she's dumb, and he's charismatic and she's cringy. Maybe that was the problem. Or maybe it was just pressure from the anti-Semites in her own party. We can't have a Jew on the ticket. That's the most likely scenario. So she doesn't pick him. She could have picked anybody else, Mark Kelly or Gretchen Whitmer or whoever. She chose a guy who brings nothing to the ticket but more extremism, more far-left insanity. And I know the media will fawn over him. They will gaslight you. They will lie to you about him. They will tell you how folksy he is and how he's just a country bumpkin who likes to hunt and fish and served in the National Guard. Well, so what? What does that do for you when your guy was the most extreme member in the House, and now is the most extreme far left governor in the country? How does that moderate the ticket? How does that appeal to anybody in Middle America, in the Rust Belt? How does that appeal to any independent? The only thing, once again, I'll say it every day, the only thing she has going for it is lots of people don't like Trump. That's it. In a personality contest, lots of people are turned off by Donald Trump, so they will vote for anybody else. There's nobody who's going to run to the polls and vote for her because they agree with her and him. I mean, I shouldn't say nobody. Yeah, there's some socialists out there. There's some people who believe in abortion in the 10th month. There's some people who want to castrate children. Yes, not a lot, not the majority, but there are some, and they will support her. But I'm telling you, this is insane that a major party in 2024 is nominating two socialists, two extreme left-wing lunatics, two ideologues who want to fundamentally transform this country. It is a gaffe. It is an unforced error like I've never seen before. There is nothing appealing about these two people. Nothing that is going to pull votes from Trump and Vance and win them the White House. If it happens, the polls are close. If it happens, forget it. We're done. I know that sounds like extreme rhetoric, but the country's done if this person wins. We will have an open border for 4 more years. We will have a cabinet and a federal bureaucracy filled with crazed, extreme left-wing lunatics. I mean, we've seen left-wing candidate. We've seen Democrats who are liberal, really, really liberal. We've never seen anything like this. We have a woman at the top of the ticket who, again, received no votes, won no primaries, and wants to protect democracy. Yeah. This woman is just not fit for the office. She's just not smart enough. There is nothing there. There is no substance. There is nothing appealing about her, except, she brings joy to the ticket. Yes, she brings joy and laughter. She's a happy warrior. That's the spin today. They're happy warriors. They smile and laugh as they castrate children and they allow BLM and Antifa to burn their city. This is what you're going to get from the mainstream media, and it's almost comical. They will avoid substance. They'll avoid policy. They don't want to talk about policy. They want to talk about joy. Listen to this fossil, Mike Barnicle, this morning on Morning Joe. Go ahead.
Joe, that's a very interesting observation that you just pointed out, the Reagan campaign of 1980. Watching the coach, and I'm going to call him the coach from now until Election Day.
The coach.
Watching the coach yesterday and watching the vice president yesterday, it was mesmerizing in the sense that it's been a while since I've seen a rally like that, either on TV or in person. And watching it, you could just sense the power in the hall. And it was the power of joy, the power of laughter, the power of hope for the future, but especially the power of those who were in the hall and those who were thinking or considering voting for this ticket, the vice president and the coach. For those considering voting for the ticket, giving them the power to think that they're participating in something that will put a smile on your face.
Oh,
it's
God.
been a long time since any aspect of American politics has put a smile on anyone's face. And these two people yesterday managed to put a smile on the nation's face.
Oh, my God. That is just vomit-inducing. Put a smile. Does anyone have more fun and laugh more than Trump at a rally? Does anyone have more joy than a crowd at a Trump rally? This is the power of joy. And she put a smile on people's faces. I want to get to this woman, get to the woman in Minneapolis that I sent you after the George Floyd riots. The George Floyd riots destroyed the downtown Minneapolis. Fires, $500 million in damages. They destroyed stores that people in that community relied on, drugstores and variety stores and dollar stores, just burned them to the ground. While this governor sat back and cheered, he waited 4 days to call in the National Guard and stop the carnage. He applauded them. He called it exciting. He said it was optimistic watching them burn the city to the ground. And his wife said she opened the windows of the governor's mansion so they could smell the burning tires because it was such a big moment in that city. Really? You think that's what the people in the neighborhoods, law-abiding people, felt? I want this woman, if she's still around, to show up at a Trump rally. I want her to do more interviews. I want her to be heard. This is the result of Tim Walz, Governor Tim Walz, allowing BLM to run wild and Antifa to run wild in his city in the name of equity. That's what he said. Equity. He said this is going to happen when a society doesn't put equity and inclusion at the forefront. You're going to get this kind of uprising. And once again, we say this every day. He applauded. He allowed the carnage. He allowed the arson, the violence. And then she told them that they will not stop and they should not stop. She said people burning a city in America in 2020 should not stop. And he made sure that they were not stopped. That's the team. That's the ticket you have in the Democrat Party. A guy who allowed the carnage and a woman who cheered it on and said they should not stop. And this poor woman, this is the result. Does this sound optimistic and exciting to you? Play this.
How was last night?
Scary. I live in the high rise right back here, and I seen them as they came down Lake Street. But then they turned and started coming over here, and I'm sitting out looking out my window. And they went straight to Office Max, the dollar store, and every store over here that I go to. I have nowhere to go now. I have no way to get there because the buses aren't running. These people did this for no reason. It's not going to bring George back here. George is in a better place than we are. And last night, I'm going to be honest, I wish I was where George was because this is ridiculous. These people are tearing up our livelihood. This is the only place I could go to shop. And now I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have anywhere to get there.
I know you.
There you go. That's the face of Tim Walz, Minnesota, right there. Stephanie Wilford, woman who has nowhere to go, wishes she was dead like George Floyd because of what Tim Walz allowed to happen in his city and indeed applauded it, cheered it on. His daughter was tweeting out warnings to the rioters when the National Guard would show up to make sure they wouldn't stop, they wouldn't get caught. That's the first family of Minnesota. Let's hear from his wife, the Gwen Walz, the first lady of Minnesota, on what she felt when rioters, when anarchists were burning their city, destroying their city, ruining that poor woman's life. Listen to what Tim Walz's wife, the first lady, had to say about this touchstone moment, as she calls it. Go ahead.
I would say those first days, when there were riots, I could smell the burning tires. And that was a very real thing. And I kept the windows open for as long as I could because I felt like that was such a touchstone of what was happening.
She kept the windows open so she could hear the neighborhoods being destroyed and Stephanie Wilford's life being destroyed. She wanted to make sure she appreciated, enjoyed that, moment, that exciting, optimistic moment. All right, I'll ask again. What does Tim Walz bring? What positive, what benefit does he bring to a ticket? This man who's been a disaster. 40% of the Minneapolis Police Department has quit under his watch. Crime has spiked. Violent crime's up over 50%. He's an absolute disaster for that state. She could have chosen any Democrat governor. Hell, Maura Healey. She could have chosen any senator, any congressperson. Mark Kelly, again, Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro. And she chose a man who's an extreme socialist, a man who hates this country. Oh, we'll get to his service to this country and get to some of the things he's done to just wreck this state. It's just mind-boggling. I understand she's an empty vessel. I understand there are people pulling the strings behind the scenes. Barack Obama and Eric Holder and Susan Rice and Nancy Pelosi, they wanted this nut. Did they want to win? I understand they agree with him. They love abortion. They love BLM. But do they want to win? This is an absolute unforced era, and Vance have to do one thing: policy. They have to focus on his policy. They have to point out what a nut he is, what an absolute out of the mainstream extremist he is. We can't have that in the White House. God, I don't care what you think of Trump and his tweets or his posts. I don't care that he says dumb things on occasion. You can't hand the country over to these lunatics. This is a frightening moment. Oh, we got more. Man, do we have more. It's just never ending. I got pages and pages of things this guy has done and said. He's worse than she is. He's worse than she is because he pretends to be something else. He's a hunter. He's a football coach. You think they had tampons in the locker room when he was a football coach? That's my question. I know that's Tampon Tim is trending because he put tampons in the boys' room in elementary school. And that might be, funny. We can joke about it. But what kind of person, what kind of father, what kind of man puts tampons in the boys' room and thinks he's doing some service, doing some good for his constituents? Just an absolute lunatic. But, do we have more? Much, much more. There was good news. Good news. One of the squad members went down last night. Yes, that's two. That's two who have been defeated in the primary. That's the good news. The bad news is the two people on the Democrat ticket are not much different than Cori Bush or Jamal Bowman. They're just as crazy. They truly are. We will show you that. I will prove to that. We'll get to that and more, but first.
Excuse me.
Where to begin? I made my list last night, and I'm telling you, I put something, a little star next to something truly crazy from this guy. And then 5 minutes later, I'd put 2 stars and then 3 stars. I mean, it's just hard to believe. He repealed the Born Alive Protection Act, which protected the lives of babies who survived an abortion. And this is no lie. No lie. This is from Just the News. It's almost, I'll read it and you try to make sense of it. Try to make sense of what kind of human being. I mean, this guy's not a bad guy. He's evil. All right. This is evil. I'm sorry. That sounds over the top. It is not. He is an evil man. In Tim Walz, again, from John Solomon and Just the News. In Tim Walz's state and on his watch, 5 infants were born alive in 2021 during failed abortions, and none was provided life-saving care. Though 2 got comfort care, the Minnesota Department of Health reported. 3 other infants were born alive during abortions in 2019, Walz's first year as governor, and they perished without life-saving care. Minnesota was the rare state to require born-alive abortions to be publicly reported, created a powerful statistic for pro-life anti-abortion forces. But in 2023, he worked with his Democrat-controlled legislature to eliminate both the reporting requirement and the state's legal obligation for doctors and nurses to administer life-saving care to infants born alive during an abortion procedure. Does that? This is a guy who took measures, assertive measures, to make sure babies born alive wouldn't survive. That's how extreme he is. This is not 3rd trimester, partial birth abortion. These are babies born alive. And they're going to make abortion an issue? I'm sorry, Donald Trump is moderate and on abortion. He's not pushing a national ban. The Supreme Court sent it back to the states and let voters decide. And Trump's not some pro-life extremist. You know that. This guy is a pro-abortion extremist. I know the media is not going to tell you this. You're not going to hear this, but it's verifiable. It's true. He took measures to not just allow abortion under any circumstances at any point, but to make sure babies born alive did not survive. That's the definition of extremism. That's evil. This guy's a monster. He's not a bad guy. Oh, you want more evil from this scumbag? He made Minnesota a sanctuary state for trans kids. He signed a bill protecting trans rights, meaning children can get sex change surgeries. The rest of the world is going the other way. Great Britain, Finland, Europe, they're banning puberty blockers, as well they should. The more people wake up and understand this, the more they realize how repulsive, how inhumane and barbaric this practice is. Taking a 10-year-old boy and sterilizing him because he's confused about his gender. And I can tell you who's making him confused: the activists, teachers in many cases. The media are confusing him, and they're thinking, oh, maybe I'm born in the wrong body. And because he's confused and probably depressed and anxious, their solution is, let's sterilize him. Let's castrate him. It's just barbaric. And this guy is out in front. This guy is a hardcore activist and advocate. On top of that, he signed legislation where if a parent will not affirm the delusions of their child, in other words, will not castrate their kid, will not put their kid on puberty blockers, the state will take the child away. Yes, the state will take someone's child away if they don't support, affirm, play along with the delusions that are drilled into the poor child's head by these trans activists. They will take your kid away. I don't know how you can get more extreme than that. What else? Illegals. Minnesota, illegal aliens can get driver's licenses, free health care, and free tuition. The biggest problem we have in this country is our open border right now. It's affecting everything: crime, housing prices, you name it. He is as big an open borders advocate as she is. So you will have a ticket with two people who don't believe this country should have a southern border, who think anyone from anywhere, drug dealers, gang members, terrorists, can just come on into our country. And if they want, they can go to Minnesota and get a driver's license and get free health care and free tuition. And he proudly stands up and says it. I'm all for illegal aliens. Yes, that's what this guy, that's what this lunatic believes. In this current state of where we have 15 million illegals just destroying neighborhoods, he wants more of that. And if you support him, you're going to get more of that. He went on a rant yesterday in this speech, which was just incredible. I mean, this is a guy, he was ripping Trump for his COVID response. And I pointed out many times, Trump has some explaining to do. Trump handed the country to Fauci. He didn't know what he was doing at the time, and he's since seen the error of his ways, but he did not handle COVID well. He's ripping Trump. He was one of the biggest lockdown lunatics in the country. He locked the state down. He closed schools. He destroyed businesses. He put business owners in jail for trying to open their businesses and make a living. And he also, by the way, this isn't even a big story. He put COVID positive patients in nursing homes, killing nursing home residents in Minnesota. Yes, he did what Andrew Cuomo did in New York, which eventually led to the end of Cuomo, and he couldn't keep his hands to himself. But that was a huge scandal in New York. It still is. It's not even mentioned in Minnesota, but he did the same damn thing. He put COVID positive patients in nursing homes. But worse is here's a guy, and yesterday his thing was talking about freedom and for people under a Democrat administration as opposed to under Trump and a Republican. And he talked about mind your own business. Play this. Do we have this coach? I love Coach. Oh yeah, he's just a coach and a teacher. Let's listen to him tell Republicans to mind their own business. Go ahead.
There's a golden rule. Mind your own damn business.
Yeah, the crowd loved it. Mind your own damn business. The guy wants to take children away from parents who will not affirm their trans identity. Worse. And this is amazing to me. Truly amazing. I don't even think we had this in Massachusetts or New York or any other crazy lockdown states where the governors were a disaster, where they were wrong about everything. This guy was a fanatic about closing down the state and forcing masks on children. He set up a snitch line. Yes, a communist, a Stalinist style snitch line, and encouraged people to rat on their neighbors if they thought they were violating any of the COVID mandates. So if you saw your neighbor, I don't know, leave the house without a mask or have more than 3 people come over for Thanksgiving, he set up a toll-free number for you to call and snitch on your neighbors. That is the most un-American. Everything about this guy is un-American and just antithetical to what we believe in. But he wanted you to snitch on your neighbors. The guy who says, mind your own damn business. Again, it's all an illusion. He's just an old fat white guy, coach, teacher, Midwesterner, who wanted you to call if you saw your neighbors doing anything that went against the state and against his insane mandates. All right, we got to get to the most insane thing of all. He also was ripping, I love this one too, ripping Trump for violent crime spiking in 2020, ripping Trump for violent crime. In the governor of Minnesota, who said the BLM riots, which destroyed his biggest city, were exciting and a sign of optimism. And he also ripped J.D. Vance for not being a real, Midwesterner, working class Midwesterner. Said J.D. Vance was a fraud. Good luck with that, fatso. Good luck with that. J.D. Vance, he wasn't a working class kid. He was a dirt poor, lower class kid who worked his way up. He ripped him for going to Yale, a Democrat. We're ripping somebody for going to a Ivy League school. All right, we got to get to the most insane thing. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. China. He loves China. A really strange habit he had over the last 30 years. Really strange. Guy just loves China. But I'm still trying to make sense of this one thing he did to protect pedophiles. I'll read it. I'll explain it to you. It's almost hard to believe it's real, but it is. We'll get to that and more. But first,
excuse me.
We got to get to his military service, which they're going to brag about because he was in the National Guard, and they're going to tell you they had some former general or something I was watching on MSNBC this morning, making the case that his military service is more impressive than J.D. Vance, who went to Iraq. Tim Walz didn't go to Iraq. Tim Walz lied about his military service. But this, I don't even know how to explain this. Under his, on his watch in Minnesota, they made pedophiles a protected class. They removed language from a bill that would include pedophiles among LGBTQ people and make them a protected class. Yes, MAPS, minor attracted people. Here it is. Here's the law. And literally what they did. It said, oh my God, I can't even read this. Sexual orientation, this is subsection 44 of some bill. Sexual orientation means having or being perceived as having an emotional, physical, sexual attachment to another person without regard to the sex of that person, or having or being perceived as having orientation for such attachment, or having or being perceived as having self-image identified, non-traditional, associated with one's biological maleness or females. Sexual orientation does not include a physical or sexual attachment to children by an adult. And they removed that language to include pedophiles in people who, among gay, lesbian, bisexuals, pedophiles. That is, someone took action. Someone said, we have to remove that in Minnesota under Tim Walz to include pedophiles among the LGBTQ protected classes. Think that's going to get any coverage on MSNBC, Or you think George Stephanopoulos will mention that? Mike Barnacle, is he still got a thrill up his leg on the power of smiling and joy? Does it sound like joy protecting pedophiles? Just mind-boggling. The more you read, the more you hear, the more it makes no sense. They just picked a guy who's more extreme, more insane than Kamala Harris. I mean, granted, he's smarter than she is, but so is Ironhead's dog. That doesn't matter. He's an extreme lunatic nut. And if we had an honest media, he'd be disqualified today. So they're going to tell you that he's a veteran. And he is. He served in the National Guard for 24 years. He had a rank of Command Sergeant Major in the Minneapolis National Guard. And he served admirably, I assume, for 24 years. Then one day, he got a call. He said, your battalion has to go to Iraq. And what did Tim Walz do? He quit. He quit the National Guard when he was sent. He never served overseas. He never served in a war zone. And when he was asked to, and he was a leader of men, he was their leader. He was in charge of this unit. And they said, you got to go to Iraq. And he quit. And the guys he served with, they hate him. It's John Kerry all over again. Stolen valor. This guy wants you to think he carried a weapon of war in war. He said as much. He wants to, ban assault weapons. And he said people shouldn't be able to get the kind of gun, the kind of weapon that I used in war. He said that. We got the audio. Do you have that clip of him talking about his service and how he had a weapon in a war zone? Well, we also have a number of people who served with him saying that he cut and ran when they needed him most. This is him claiming he carried a weapon in war. Go ahead.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back. And I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states. And we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
I carried that weapon in war. He said it on video. You won't see this too many places. He did one overseas deployment to Italy. He never went to Iraq. He never went to Afghanistan. Again, you mentioned this. I tweeted this and immediately, Trump got the deferments. Trump never served. I never said Trump served. Trump never claimed he served. He never claimed he carried a weapon in war. This guy did. This story, this piece by Alpha News in Minnesota, that's like the only honest media in Minnesota. This is the woman who did the Fall of Minneapolis documentary, explaining all the lies they told you about George Floyd. And this guy was among the biggest liars. He knew what the autopsy said, and he lied about it over and over again. He still knows George Floyd OD'd. He knows that, but he lies. Any chance he gets, he lies. But the people who served with Tim Walz, they went on the record and talked about what he did, how he bailed on them, how he left them hanging as they were about to head into Iraq. This piece is long, but it's worth watching. We'll play a little of it. Let's go.
The public needs to know how pathetic his leadership was as a National Guardsman.
On a 150-year-old farm in Brewster, Tom Behrens hopes his tell it like it is style will finally get the attention he believes it deserves in Minnesota's race for governor. In a way, he's back again to wage a public war of words against Tim Walz.
He abandoned us. What the hell kind of leader does that? He just, as soon as the shots were fired in Iraq, he turned and ran the other way and hung his hat up and quit.
We'll get to Barron's new message for voters in a moment. But this all starts years earlier when Barron says Walz's misleading statements about his military service first led him to come forward in the fall of 2018. So you try to get this message out, but Minnesota's largest newspaper checks it out, says it's 100% true, but yet refuses to print.
When I hung the phone up, I said, what the hell is this, North Korea?
Back in 2005, a warning order went out to the 1st Battalion, 125th Field Artillery to mobilize for a mission to Iraq. At the time, Walz served as the unit's highest non-commissioned officer, but months later, Walz would retire from the Guard, avoid the deployment, and run for Congress. Tom Behrens was next in line for the position and was asked to take his place.
I was like, well, for Pete's sake, if this guy quit, and if I say I'm not going to do it, I mean, what the hell kind of leadership is that? If a company would say that we're going to deploy to Iraq or somewhere and you're going to be gone for whatever amount of time, and then a foreman just says, no, I'm not going. I mean, what does that say to the 500 people that work in that factory?
Behrens would go on to serve in Iraq on a nearly 2-year deployment as a command sergeant major. All while Walz began using that title as a congressman. Behrens says he first contacted Walz with his concerns, sending these letters to Washington. They all went unanswered. But then we fast forward to the election in 2018 in Minnesota, and you try at that time to get people's attention with this story and also with what seems to be a very misleading statement that he continued to make about his service.
It kind of just sat there. When he was a congressman, he bragged that he was a command sergeant, retired command sergeant major. I'm the highest ranking person ever in the House, and all this lie that he was telling. The state of Minnesota came out after 2018, after this was exposed, and they said, well, he can say that he served as a command sergeant major, but he can't say he's a retired one because he's not.
And that's what he was saying.
And he was saying that, and there was lots of lots of cards coming in the mail, for him to be elected. They said right on there he's a retired command sergeant major, just tooting his own horn, just hanging on the coattails of people that actually are command sergeant majors that went through all the process and put all the time in.
A spokesperson for the Minnesota National Guard said Walz wasn't able to retire as a command sergeant major since he failed to complete coursework and requirements related to the rank. Verified documents show the Army corrected his service record. Walz was reduced in rank to an E8 Master Sergeant after retirement and his conditional promotion. Alpha News again asked
just imagine if this were J.D. Vance. You think they might cover this a little bit? You think that guy, Tom Behrens, who replaced him when he quit on his troops as they were heading to Iraq, you think he might be on your TV screen today? You think they might be writing about this in the New York Times? They will tell you he's a veteran. Again, he is. He served for 24 years in the National Guard. But this seems kind of important. It feels like a guy who wants to be a leader, says he's a leader, wants to lead the country. When he was asked to lead his troops to Iraq, he quit on them. I don't know. Seems kind of relevant to me. It seems like it might be a story if that were about J.D. Vance, who volunteered to go to Iraq right out of high school. And you won't hear much, as Ron DeSantis said, you've heard more about this guy's military service in 2 days than you've heard about DeSantis's or Vance's or anybody else's, because the Democrats are desperate to paint him as a man's man, as a football coach and a veteran. Well, who cares? What does that even matter? It's irrelevant. Policy is what matters. His viewpoints, what he will do as vice president and maybe president someday, what he has done as governor. They're going to do their best. There is going to be a cover up like we haven't seen since, I don't know, a month ago when they were lying about Biden's cognitive state. They're going to pretend this guy is, look at him with the flannel shirt, big smile, just a good old boy from Minnesota who hunts and fishes and coaches football. Ugh, just repulsive. I'm telling you, we got to keep digging because this guy is a lunatic. And this is something that the media should do, but it won't do. He has traveled to China 30 times. He went on his honeymoon to China right after the Tiananmen Square massacre. He went to China. He loves China. He doesn't consider China our adversary. He is a big fan of China. And he goes there every year to China. He takes students on trips to China and he tells them how wonderful China is. He's a teacher and he teaches kids how wonderful China is. Even today, he sings the praises of China. That is odd. A guy from Minnesota, a teacher, travels to China 30 times. I don't want to, just invent some conspiracy theory, but wouldn't that be worth asking, investigating? Why does this guy constantly go to China? Why does he spend so much time? Why does he love China so much? What's so great about it? That's a long ass trip, Minnesota to China every year for 30 years. Why? Be great if someone would ask him, but I'm afraid they won't. All right, do we have time to get to the big story of the Olympics? Yes, he did it again. Iman Khalif won again, a unanimous decision yesterday. Kicked ass again, beat the crap out of another woman. She went the distance. I'll give her credit. She went the distance with a guy. He fights for the gold medal Friday. He's going to win the gold medal in women's boxing. Congratulations in advance to Iman. And he's still being protected. They're still lying about it. They're still saying that, he wore dresses as a kid. So he's a woman. He's not. He's a man. He failed multiple tests. He has XY chromosomes. He's a male. He was banned from the World Championships a year ago for a reason. It doesn't matter. He's going to beat the crap out of another woman on Friday, stand on the gold medal stand. They're going to play the Algerian national anthem, and the media will applaud it. They know he's a man. Everyone knows he's a man. They do not care. That guy right there is going to all he has to do is beat up one more woman, and he wins the gold. Congratulations to Iman. You must be so proud. And he's going to win, but you know who didn't win last night? Corey Bush. This is great. Corey Bush, perhaps the craziest, dumbest member of the squad, went down in flames, lost in a rout in her primary in Missouri. She's out. Ayanna Pressley and AOC are in mourning. Their girl went down in flames. Sadly, I don't see any other member. Maybe Ilhan Omar. She just eked out a win 2 years ago. Maybe she'll get defeated at some point, but Ayanna Pressley, AOC, they're safe. Jamal Bowman and Corey Bush are out. And you know why? Because they were too crazy, even for the Democrats. AOC, she plays the game. She votes the way they wanted to vote. She supported Joe Biden. Now she'll support Kamala. She's not as crazy as Jamal Bowman or Corey Bush, but she's vowing revenge. She says she's coming after the Jews now, and she blames it all on the Jews. She's going to come after them, and I'm not sure in what way. Maybe she'll get a cabinet position if Kamala wins. Maybe she'll be an ambassador if Kamala wins. But she lost her seat in the House, and that's a good thing. And I don't care how crazy the guy who beat her is. He can't be as crazy as she is. Nobody can. I mean, Tim Walz is close, but she was as obnoxious. She's the one that bragged about all the money, hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money she spent on security, and wanted to defund the police more than anyone. She was the biggest defund the police advocate of them all. Tim Walz wants to defund the police. Kamala Harris wants to defund the police. Those are your mainstream Democrats today. But we'll keep reading. We'll keep looking for something that makes Tim Walz a moderate, a centrist. We'll keep watching. I don't think we're going to find it. He's not. He's a lunatic. He's an extremist. He's a radical. He's a socialist. And he cannot be vice president. But we will see how it goes. I don't know. Crazy, crazy time in this country. But that will do it for today. Thanks for listening. Thanks for chatting. Thank you, Ironhead. I'm Jerry Callahan. This is The Callahan Show.